Okay, Boker Tov, and Chanukah Sameach. Happy third day of Hanukkah. Today's daf is Yud Zayin 17, and we pick up at the very bottom of Tet Zayin Amud Bet. We're dealing with the problem about if you not only enter the mikdash when you're tamei, you bring a korban, but even if you stay there for the time and you do an act of bowing down, even just bowing down on the knees, but if it's officially an act of bowing down, meaning it's towards the west, towards the Kodesh Kodashim, or if you hesitate, the amount of time it takes to do a full bowing down, which is like 3 seconds or something. Anyway, so now we pick up at the very bottom of Tet Zayin Amud Bet.
It sounds like it took longer to do a full bowing down.
I don't know. The Gemara said how long it takes you to read a pasuk. But Rava asked, this is all about a korban when it's b'shogeg. That's the whole focus of our Mishnah. Let's say it was a case of getting lashes, and they warned the person, okay, and they said, "Don't wait, don't stay in the base of mikdash. You just became tamei." And he says, "I don't care. You're going to get malchus. I don't care." So after he said those words, "I don't care," is he chayav? Does he need to wait the full amount of time in order to be chayav? Is that considered like that means like you're actively staying somewhere? And there's two questions also. There's a question about that you don't get lashes for lav she'ein bo masa. So there could be a question, and sometimes we have that even passive is considered a continuation of an act. Tosos discusses this, if you might remember, we had in the Gemara Makos about a person that is wearing kilayim. And he has an opportunity to take it off and he doesn't take it off, and it's the fact that he is keeping it on the amount of time he could take it off and put it back on, considered like he put it off, take it back on. And again, that's the question of is the Isra of Kilayim to put it on or to wear it, but also since he did the initial act of putting it on, is keeping it on considered like an active type of a thing, a continuing of the putting it on. This here is a little different because here he became Tamei in the base of Mikdash. He never did an initial act of entering the base of Mikdash. But anyway, so one way of conceptualizing this is that it considered like he's actively saying, is it yesh bo masa or not? But the other way is that, at what stage is it? So the question of yesh bo shehiyah, okay, so is that enough to give him malchus or not? Meaning you could raise the especially to wait. You need to, I think I might have misstated it the first time. Do you need to wait? But then but then you wouldn't get malchus immediately. I mean, you were just warned, and you got to get yourself out of the base of mikdash. Clearly, you're not over in the first second. So the real question is waiting enough? Since the person didn't actively enter the base of mikdash, it just takes waiting and not running out enough to deserve malchus. And that, again, as I said, could be framed two ways. Number one, would we consider waiting an action? And number two, like maybe the malchus is for the lav of entering, is for the prohibition of entering, not for the issue, for the problem of staying. So let's take a look.
I'm missing this. Weren't we just saying that waiting while being tamei is a problem?
For korban. The question is, we have a tradition that's true about korban, right? Would we assume, or we learn from a pasuk actually that you get kares, and because we learn from the pasuk you get kares, we can infer that there's a korban. That was the earlier discussion, but that doesn't say you could bring a korban without doing an action. That doesn't say it would be considered an action for malchus, or that doesn't say that it would be the transgression of the lav that would deserve you malchus, although you assume if there's a korban, there's a lav. So let's look at the Gemara's question. By Rabbi, tzarich shehiyah l'malchus or ein tzarich shehiyah l'malchus. The korban gemiri shehiri, l'malchus lo gemiri shehiyah. For korban, we have this idea, not for malchus. O dilma, or do we say bifnim gemiri shehiyah? This concept is true when it happens we're talking about inside the base of mikdash, and we're not meaning it's about the nature of the violation. It's not a question about for this halacha, right? It is considered a violation to be waiting around. So lo shal l'korban, lo shal l'malchus. It doesn't matter for which one. So the Gemara says teku. Okay. Now the funny thing is, and what sort of made me misstate it the first way, is the phrase tzarich shehiyah. Do you need shehiyah? Sounds like the alternative is that you don't need it and that you transgress immediately, right? Whereas I think that the way that Tosos is reading it, and certainly Rashi is not so clear, okay, but Rashi also sounds like the meaning is not do you need it to transgress, but is it sufficient to transgress? All right, so it's funny the way it's actually being phrased. Maybe you could say it the other way. You could say, like I said, that if somebody, korban is somebody who's unintentional. If somebody's intentionally staying in, then maybe even if they pause even for a second, right? That's the other way of saying it, right? If I'm unintentional, so I haven't done something, so bad until it's what do you call it? If I accidentally became tamei, you give me a little bit more latitude. right? And you sort of like, you give me time to go out or whatever. But if I'm willingly staying in, that willingness makes every second that I stay an act of willful staying, right? So so maybe, that's the other way of reading Rava, which is if somebody is intentionally violating, maybe you don't even need to wait. Obviously if he runs out, then he's not intentionally violating. But if he's intentionally violating and staying, maybe even for 1 second, that would get him malchus. Okay, so that's 2 ways to read it. Okay, so now the Gemara says like this. By Rava. So Rava asked, Tola atzmo ba'avir azara mahu. Let's say the guy was actually, suspending himself. He was flapping his arms and he was flying or something. I don't know. He was climbing on the walls. He was suspending himself off the walls of the azara. What's the halacha? And then he waited the time it took to do ishtachavaya. Now this gets to a real core of what's the idea of shehiyah. Is the idea of shehiyah that we consider it as if you virtually did an act of bowing down, and therefore you only transgress if you could have in theory bowed down during that time. So when you're hanging on the walls, when you're being Spider-Man.
I have to say that.
There you go.
Spider-Man.
So in that case, you can't do an act of bowing down. So it's not just the waiting. It's the waiting translates into a virtual bowing down. Okay, so in this case, you would not bring a korban. No, or it's halacha just of any time that there's waiting inside, similar to the phrase before, which is sort of like a way of saying of this is just the nature of this prohibition, and we're not going to make distinctions. It doesn't matter whether it's fit for bowing down or not. We don't know. Okay, so we have 2 questions. One is it just the amount of time, or is it the amount of time that we can view it as you virtually bow down? So if it's not physically possible to bow down, you would not transgress. Or another question is about, do we apply this principle to malchus? And again, I said that we can understand that in 2 ways. You could say that if somebody is willfully staying, right, and they're not trying to get out, they're saying, I don't care, I'm going to stay here even though I'm tummy and so on, then you don't need any minimum amount of time. Even doing it for a second is an act of violation. I think that that's a very straightforward way of reading Rava. But Tosfos seems to read it the other way, which is that maybe waiting is not sufficient. Maybe the halacha of waiting was only said by a korban. Okay, and maybe that has to do with the fact that you need to do an act in order to get malchus. Yes, Charlie.
Back to the Spider-Man thing. I presume they're assuming the Yazara is a Rishut Hayachid.
You mean like for Suffolk Tuma? Yeah. So that's, I don't know. I'm not sure that's true. I'm going to have to check on that. Okay, now take a look, by the way, at Tosfos Ragat to understand this. Okay. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. So, okay. So 2 things. First of all, I did Tosfos a disservice because I see Tosfos explains it actually the way I was saying, not that whether shehiyah suffices, but whether you need shehiyah. If you look at Tosfos, so Ein Tarch Shehiyah on Zayin Amud Aleph, Tosfos says shehiyah l'malchus. Hachamashma delokya shehiyah. You definitely would get lashes for shehiyah. Delokami bayilei el itzarich shehiyah kishir ishtachava olo. The only question is if you needed that amount, right? But certainly if you were shoha, you would get malchus. And then that leads Tosfos into a discussion of why is it so obvious? What about the fact that, that you need an act in order to get lashes? Okay, so like, what they said, the last time I thought I was wrong, I was mistaken. So it goes back to the way I explained it the first way before I started correcting myself, which is, yes, the question is that shehiyah is when the whole thing was unintentional, right? And therefore we could say that we're not, we're going to give you a little latitude, and until you wait a certain amount of time, you're not violating. It's not considered like you are you actively staying in. But if you're willfully staying there and you're saying you don't care, then maybe you transgress for the first second. Maybe you don't mean shehiyah. Okay, that's the question. Now, by the way, just for another clarification, look at the Tosfos before this. Tzarich shehiyah l'malchus, Tosfos says, B'timei atzmo b'shogeg ayri. What happened was you didn't willfully matame yourself. You're willfully staying there, but you became tamei b'shogeg. There was that rodent or whatever. They said, don't touch it, you'll be tummy. You're not allowed to be tummy in the base of Mikdash. You said, I don't care. Then clearly you get malchus. Then you're getting malchus for the act of being matame yourself. Okay? So you got 3 scenarios. One scenario is you're tamei and they say, don't walk into the base of Mikdash, and you walk in. Boom, malchus. Okay, or they didn't warn you and you walked in, boom, korban. Act number 2. They say, don't touch that sheretz in the base of Mikdash. And you say, you don't care, and you touch it. Boom, malchus. Okay, scenario number 3. You touch the sheretz in the base of Mikdash, Okay, you did not willfully touch it. Now you're aware that you're tamei. Okay, so the one scenario is you were aware for a second, and then you forgot. Okay, which is a little bizarre. Okay, and then you forgot, and then you were like, because that's helam tuma. Right, you need some helam. You forgot that it happened, and then you waited long enough, and then you realized, then you bring a korban. Okay, that's like the case of our Mishnah, but it's a little bizarre. I don't know if we even stopped to explain the bizarreness of that you touched it and then you forgot a split second later. Okay, but the other scenario is you touched it, you didn't forget. Okay, and people are telling you better get out because you're going to get chayav malchus. If you don't get out right away, you're tummy and you're staying in the base of Mikdash, and you say, I don't care. And you willfully are staying in. So in that case, the question is, because you're willfully staying in, do you get malchus for the first second, or do you need the shir shahiyah even when you're intentional? Okay, so that is the first question that we asked. All right, so now the Gemara continues.
You think that there would be no shvatim if, little you're a zvuv.
I know, but maybe some eagle flying above dropped something. Okay, so now the Gemara says like this. I don't know what to tell you. By Ravashi. So those were Rava's questions. Now Ravashi asked. Time atzmo b'mezid mahu. Okay, now you're matami yourself willfully. Now that sounded like what Tosfos just said was definitely chayav. But let's see what it sounds like in the Gemara. Okay, onus gemiri shehiyah b'mezid lo gemiri shehiyah. Is it that you need shehiyah when the tumah became unintentional, but when it was willful, you're chayav right away? Similarly, like willfully staying after you became tamei, willfully touching, you're chayav right away. Okay. Now, again, it's also a little bit of a question, which is, are we talking about that for korban? Or we're talking about for malchus. It's a little vague. You would assume that since it's b'mezid, it's for korban. It's for malchus, okay? But we'll talk about that in a minute. What do you say? B'fnim gimir shehiyah lo shab'onis v'lo shna b'mezid. No, this is a halacha about tumah when you become tamei in the base of mikdash, and it doesn't matter what the context is, whether you became tamei, whether you became tamei intentionally or unintentionally. You always need shehiyah in order to be chayav. So the Gemara says, take it. We don't know. Now, what's the case? Since it's talking about b'mezid, you would think the issue is do you get malchus for being matame yourself b'mezid? Okay, which is a very reasonable question, of course, and the answer presumably should be yes. You wouldn't need shehiyah if you willfully were matame yourself, which is what Tosfos said before. So Tosfos said before, you definitely do get malchus. He can't explain the Gemara's question that way. So let's look at this Tosfos. Kimei atzbon b'mezid mai. Tosfos says, okay, so Tosfos says it's talking about a korban. If you knew you were in the mikdash and you were matami yourself b'mezid, boom, you definitely get malchus. The question is, you forgot you were in the mikdash and you knew you were touching the sheretz and becoming tamei. Okay, and then the question is, in that scenario, so it's for Tosfos, it's still about a korban. You're not willfully violating, you're willfully tamei, but not willfully violating. And therefore, that's the question of, do you even need the shehiyah for that scenario? Okay, so we have a lot of different types of variations. All right. Do you need it if you're willfully, matame yourself and you know you're in the mikdash, according to Tosfos, then you obviously get malchus. If you did not willfully matame yourself, but you're willfully staying in the mikdash, then the question is, do you need shehiyah to get malchus, or do you get malchus right away the first second you're willfully staying? And then the third scenario, Tosfos reads as a korban, you're willfully matame yourself, but you don't realize you're in the mikdash. And the question is, do you bring a korban? And for him, therefore, the question is, do you need, in that case, since we're talking about a korban, do you definitely need shehiyah? Or do we say maybe you don't because you were willfully matame yourself? Yes, Charlie.
So there's another case where you're going to get tuma in the zar, which is you try to shech an animal and you screw up, which makes the animal nevela.
Right.
And that animal needs to be removed.
Yeah.
And someone has to remove it,
there
and you're going to do it deliberately.
That's a good point. You're right. That's a very good point. Okay. So now the Gemara says like this. All right. So those were some fun sort of variations. Boy Ravashi. Ravashi has another variation. Nazir bekever. Now, how about you're a Nazir? You could also ask about a Kohen who's in a cemetery. Now, you would have to say
since before we were saying it might be a difference if you were matami yourself willfully or not, you'd have to say, like Rashi says, they were bringing this guy in a box, and they were suspending the box in a way in which he was being able to be in a cemetery and not become tamei, and then somebody ripped the top off the box, or the bottom of the box collapsed, and then he found himself, I don't know, he was in a plane and the plane was crashing, and he jumped out with a parachute, and he wound up landing ba'onis into basic kvaros. Okay, so he got into the basic kvaros without willfully entering in. Okay, or he was chasing after a deer and he turned around a second later and he willfully, whatever. He's in the basic kvaros. It was unintentional. Okay, and now the question is, right? Does he need shehiyah? Now the shehiyah here is not for the korban, because the korban you bring is not for becoming tamei. If another becomes tamei, he brings a korban for not for the aveira of becoming tamei. He would bring it even if he became tamei ba'onis. He brings it in order to restart his nazirus. So we're definitely not dealing with the issue of korban here. And there's no korban for the aveira of becoming tamei. We're dealing with the idea of getting lashes. So it's similar to the question before about whether you get for malchus, are you coming and you're willfully staying, you get lashes immediately, or only after you wait the amount of shehiyah. Okay, because by the way, just realize it would be a little bizarre, but the amount of time that we would clock you by a nazir would be the amount of time to do a prostration. Like to say that in the azara and in tumah, and it's like you did an avoda when you were tamei, and therefore the reason you're getting lashes, it's because you had enough time to be present and to do something in the azara that would be meaningful. Okay, that would make sense in the azara, that we would look at the time to bow down. Why should we look at it here? So let's take a look. Nazir bekever, by shehiyah l'malchus, oh ain't Bifnim gimi rishahira in the azara. Now you really understand the contrast to the idea of bifnim. Before we weren't understanding so much why I was emphasizing that. Okay, but bifnim, the point about this amount of time makes sense in the azara. B'chutz lo gimi rishahira, not outside. Odilma ba'onis gimi rishahira. No, maybe it's a halacha for just when the tumah happened ba'onis. So now the point is, when do we say you've done something wrong? The whole situation plopped itself on you, okay? And so when can we say that you've done something substantial enough to, like, we can measure that you entered into the basic kavaros when you were tamei? How do we measure that you stayed? What does it mean to stay? Right? So, like, if you think about it, when you eat something, it's not enough to eat a tiny bit to transgress. You need to eat a kazayas. Right? So there's a logic that there's a sheer, an amount of staying that is considered like, because the situation, like I said, just sort of fell on you. So what does it mean that you've done something wrong, that you're deserving malchus, you actively stayed? So that would make sense that we would need. Now, why the amount of time should be the amount of time to bow down? Who knows? Okay, but anyway, that's the question. Okay, Odilma ba'onis community, whenever it happened ba'onis, in order to make what you're doing considered an act, that requires shehiyah. Lo shna b'fnim v'lo shna b'chutz. It doesn't matter in the base of mikdash, out of the base of mikdash, and the Gemara ends with teku. We don't know. I see there's hands up. Before I pick up the hands, I want to say Tosfos asks a very important question, which is very relevant for Kohanim. Which Tosfos says, I don't understand. Once you're in the base of kvaros, you're not doing another transgression by staying in the base of kvaros, because your level of tumah is not increasing. Meaning, when you're in the mikdash and you're tamei, the nature of the violation is that your tumah is violating the mikdash, and your staying in the mikdash is maintaining that state of violation. You need to remove the offensive thing from the mikdash, right? That's why staying in the mikdash when you're tamei is a problem. But when you are a nazir, the problem is not that you're staying in the basic kvaros, that you're the problem. The problem is you're becoming tamei. But as long as you're there, right on top of the kever, you're not becoming any more tamei by staying there, right? So, I mean, I understand that at a certain emotional level, a nazir and a basic kvaros is like offensive. They don't belong together. You got to get him out. Okay, but halachically, the problem is you're becoming tamei. So it just says, how are you more becoming tamei by just staying there longer? And this is very relevant for a question of, like, the Kohen is tamei, while a Kohen is sort of like care, for a father, let's say, or mother, doing, he's obviously allowed to become tamei. He brings the sort of, the coffin into the basic kvaros or whatever, So then the question is, he's not a problem if he goes over other kvaros or other types of things, because it's not like increasing the level of tumah. Interesting question comes after the burial. How does he have to get himself out of the base of kvaros, and the fact that he's tummy today, but he's not actively touching the mace, and there's all those distinctions. But anyway, Tosfos raises that important point, that it's one thing in the mikdash, the tumah there is a continued violation, and it has to be removed. Whereas here, if you're already tamei, what is the continued violation? Okay, Charlie, you had a question, then Michael.
Yeah. I just forgot this.
Okay, Michael.
So the question is this: the differences between Tida, Ishtachavaya, and all those things. Does that have a nafkamina for Yom Kippur, like what we were supposed to be doing? People like go on this Gemara.
Well, I mean, well, Korim and Mishtachavim, people do. I do it,
I do too, but I see almost no one else does.
People just do it on the knees. People don't go down like that.
I've seen people just appreciate your means you're like a line, right? Doesn't that mean that?
Not clear, because that might be kida, because that's like getting your face totally against the ground. But anyway, it's just a minhag, Michael. It's not a halacha by Yom Kippur. Yes.
Yeah, I
Pishri
remember.
Yadayim could just mean you could anyway. This is
What's
yesterday's stuff.
Yeah.
For this.
What isn't Ragline means that your legs are out?
Oh, it's interesting. So then, what's the difference between that and kida? If you're totally flat, and
I thought kida was that that's what they said, that no one else can do it over Gamliel, because you actually don't bend your knees. You get your face
I don't know. Anyway, that's yesterday's stuff. Mike, yes.
Yeah, so the comparison to eating, there's you have to eat a certain shear in order to get punished.
Right.
We also hold hasi shear asur min haTorah.
Right.
But is there a comparable thing for time?
Right. So that's an interesting question. The Gemara here is focused on this punishment, or the consequence, korban or the malchus.
Right.
Okay.
Why is the Nazir become tamei if the roof goes off of his
well, it's because it's not so clear. I don't want to get into it.
If there are no trees around.
Yeah, I understand. It's not so clear. You're right, but I don't want to get into it. Okay. Now, let's say so what we now focus on the amount of time or the act of hishtachava. But the other point is, did he take the short route out or the long route out? Okay. So if he became here or whatever, okay, tamei here, okay, if he goes a straight line, but if he sort of went like that, okay, then he transgresses. If he takes the short route out, he's chayiv, the long route out.
Oh, I thought there were actually two doors, right? Weren't there? And
Whatever. Doesn't matter. Whatever. Any longer route, he's chayiv. So now the Gemara says like this. Amar Rava, says Rava. So Rava says, it's very fascinating. Rava says, okay, Shehiyah is you're standing and you're doing nothing. But as long as you are actively walking, and as long as you're doing the short route, you can take the whole day to walk it. So you can go like this, very slowly. I'm getting there.
And you can talk to someone along the way.
Yes, but if you pause, then we measure it by Shehiyah and your chayav. If you take a long route, even if you run it, you're chayav. Okay, the halacha is pausing is one thing, and short route is another, as long as you're actively walking, and the short route is not measured by, if we don't give you a time, it's just you have to walk out the short route. Okay, so by Rava. So Rava asked, Shehiyut mahu shiyot, I guess mahu sheyit starfu. Let's say, okay, we decided that the shear of Shehiyah was 3 seconds. Okay, was 3 seconds. So now I'm going to wait a second. I'm going to start walking, short route. Wait a second, start walking.
Do they combine?
Wait a second. Okay, so it's not one period of 3 seconds. Do they combine? Okay, Ma'oshayit starfu. The tivshalei mididei. Why can't he figure it out from his own ruling? Why? Because he himself ruled that you can go very slowly as you're walking out. So I just already gave you the answer. But the Gemara thinks if you're going very slowly, isn't that a lot of pauses? So the Gemara says, no, hasam b'delo shah. That's going extremely slowly, but never stopping and pausing. I want to know if you took tiny little breaks. Okay, so we don't know the answer. Now Abaye asked Rabba. Abaye's this question will sort of also imply an answer to Rava's question. Balo ba'arucha shir ktsara mahu. So Rava took it for granted that it's about which path you take, not the amount of time you take. Abaye asks exactly that question. When we say the short path and the long path, do we say if you would go this way, it would take 5 seconds?
If we go this way, it would take 10 seconds. And now the real, or maybe I guess the real point is anything that's more than 5 seconds. If we would go this way, it would take 5 seconds. So now the rule is he can't take more than 5 seconds getting out. If he's a fast runner and can do that, the long route in 5 seconds, he's safe. If he goes the short route and takes more than 5 seconds, he transgresses. Abai is asking, Rabbi takes it for granted that it's defined by the route, not the time. Abai asks that question. Is it defined by the time it takes to do the route, or is it defined by which route you take? Okay? You could tell they were having fun.
Yes.
So, Baya me Rabba. So, Baya from Rabba. Balo ba'arucha shir ktsara. You did the long route, but you did it so fast, you're a good runner in the time it takes to do the short route. Mahu, what's the halacha? Shir gemiri, that is this really about the amount of time? V'chibalo ba'arucha shir ktsar pater. So if you do the long route, but the amount of time for the short route, you're exempt. O dilma dafka gemiri. No, or it's like Rav assumed. It's not about the time, it's about the route. Barucha chayiv ktsara pater. The long one you're chayiv, the short one you're pater. It's about the route you take, not the amount of time. Amrlei lo nisna rucha lihidachod etzlo. You cannot, the long one cannot be pushed off in favor of the short one, which basically sounds like he's saying, the way Rashi reads it, the long one you're always going to be chayiv for, even if you do it fast, okay? So that sounds like what Rava was assuming. It's not the amount of time it takes to do the short one, it's the route, okay? So if you do the short route and you take a long time, you're fine. You do the long route and you take a short time, you transgress. Sounds like we're getting back to Rava's idea that it goes by the route and not the amount of time. Wait, let's keep on going. So the Gemara says like this. So, Maskif la Rav Zera. Rav Zera asked on this. Ela de kaimelan, tamei shishimesh b'misa, heichim yishkachasla. So we have a halacha that if somebody is tamei and kohen, and he does avodah the Beis Hamikdash, he's chayav misa b'dei shamayim, not misa's basing, misa b'dei shamayim. Okay, and now misa b'dei shamayim is different than if you stay in the Beis Hamikdash where you're chayav kares. So Rav Zera assumes, now why he has to assume this is not clear, that there's a scenario where you're a kohen who does avodah in the Beis Hamikdash when you're tamei, you only get misa b'dei shamayim, and you don't get kares for staying in the Beis Hamikdash as a tamei person, because it only says misa, and he assumes that misa misa suggests that's the only punishment you get. So, what is the scenario that you were able to do an avoda in the Beis Hamikdash when you were tamei and not stay there long enough to be chayav kares? Okay, you got it? Because for the avoda you're chayav misa b'dei shamayim, but aren't you staying long enough? Aren't you chayav kares as well? So heichim yishkachasla the lo shaha. If the guy ran out, how did he do the avoda? Where did he have the time? So if you took the amount of time that it takes to do the avoda, bar karesu, then it's not just misa, it's also kares. Now, why is that dependent on our earlier discussion about the long route and the short route? Let's take a look. If the point is short route, if the point is the amount of time it takes, so you're only chayav if you spend more than the amount of time it takes to do the short route. So mishkachas la the anis nafshe b'ktsara v'avid avoda. So here's the idea. This short route is 5 seconds. Okay. So then he says, what you would do, we would understand that the real halacha here is 5 seconds. Okay. So therefore, you would have a case that you did an avoda, or let's say, I don't know, the guy is like way back here. Okay, and let's say you got to sort of like, I don't know, move around or whatever, and let's say it's 30 seconds. There are a lot of people who knows. Okay, so we've got now, we're putting you on the clock. You've got 30 seconds, buddy. Okay, that's your short route. Okay, so this guy's really fast. He shechs a korban. He's got the knife right there by the neck of the korban. It takes 2 seconds. He runs here and he gets out within the 30 seconds. That would make sense if it's about shear. Okay, Ella, but if the issue is short route and not the amount of time it takes to do a short route, so how do you find it? Now that's not exactly clear, because what's your problem? He still shucks the korban and then goes out the short route. What's the issue? So the way Rashi explained, right? You understand the question? Like, why should it matter, right? So the way he does the short route, he shucks the korban. So the way Rashi explains it is the following. How do you factor in the combination that we said short route, plus we said that you can wait. Shihia, let's get another one of the nice new pens that Hanan gave me. Okay, you could have here, you have shehiyah, and shehiyah is defined as we said, let's say 3 seconds. Okay, how do those two factors combine? All right, so the way Rashi explains it is the following: is that if you say that the idea of short route is to determine the amount of time, then Rashi would say we would total the time. The short route time is 30 seconds, plus you're allowed to be shoha up to 3 seconds, right? That's the kidei hishtachavaya. Remember that? So your total amount of time, buddy, we're putting 33 seconds on the clock. Go, okay? And then we get the idea, right, that we're assuming the avoda, let's say we're assuming the avoda will take you like, I don't know, 7 seconds, okay? So then we understand it. You could say, all right, the short route was 30 seconds. It's all about time. You see, 3 seconds. I got 33 seconds. This will take me 7 seconds, and then I can rush out in the next thing in 25 seconds. That makes sense. I can understand how you can do the avoda and get out in time. Everybody with me? Mm-hmm. But if the short route is not about time, then there's just the following halacha. You have to take the short route out, and independent of having to take the short route out, you can't be shohem more than 3 seconds. So now you got a problem, because now it's going to take you more than 3 seconds to do the avoda. Okay? So that's why he says, if it's about time, I get it. You can combine this time with this time, do the avoda, and rush out. But if it's about take this route and don't spend more than 3 seconds pausing, he says it's going to take you more than 3 seconds to do the avoda. So how does that work? All right.
What's he doing in the avoda if he knows he's tamei? They told him he's tamei.
All right, he shouldn't be, but that's it. That's why he's chayav misa b'dei shemayim.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's what we're trying to do. The halacha is he's chayav misa, and he wants to know what is the scenario that he violates and is chayav misa, but then doesn't violate spending too long in the Beis Hamikdash, which would also get him kares. Okay, so if you say you can combine the times and you got 33 seconds, I get it. He does this, takes 7 seconds, rushes out in 25 seconds, he's safe. But if it's take the short route and don't do anything, pause anything for longer than 3 seconds, how is he going to do the avoda and not also be chayav for being in the Beis Hamikdash? So the Gemara says, Ella, Iamarta davki gemiri hech mishkachos lo. So Amar Rabbi, so says Abaye, my kusha, why is this difficult? Mishkachos lo kagon shababa ktsara, v'hafach b'tzinora. Basically, he says, I don't get it. It's very easy. Why is it so easy? Because let's say here he is. He's not down here. He's up here. He's at the top of the Mizbeach. Okay, here we've got the fire. Here we've got like a korban. Okay, sitting there. And here's a little like a fork, a pitchfork that's up there that's returning. That's returning the meat, over the korban. So what he does is, okay, there it is. It's burning on the fire. So what he does is, fine. He's going to run straight down here, go straight out. He's going to take the shortest route. Okay, but as he's running out, he flips over the korban on his way out. He didn't even have to pause for a second. There you are, you're running, you turned over the thing, and you kept on walking. Even if it took a half second, he still has 3 seconds to wait. You know, he has 3 seconds to pause. So Bai says, I got it. Okay. If a non-Kohen turned over with the pitchfork, like a meat of a korban, so it would burn better, chayav misa, that's an avoda. The same way putting the fats and the entrails on the altar is an avoda. Okay, so then it's not one of the classic 4 avodas, but whatever. Then also and it's an avoda for a non-Kohen to be chayav misa b'dei shemayim. It's also an avoda for a Kohen to be chayav misa if he does it when he is tamei. Okay, so it's part of the burning of the fats and entrails on the mizbeach. So the Gemara says, okay, Gufa, let's look at that statement. Amar Afuna, zar shavach b'tinor chayav misa. Hey Chidami, what's the case? Idelo hafach la lomi achli. If the meat, if you wouldn't turn it over, wouldn't cook. Okay, would not cook, wouldn't be like consumed by the fire because that's got to burn up. So kshita, of course, you're chayav. Like you did something that was necessary, that was like putting it on the fire. Without you turning it over, it wouldn't have been consumed. So and if you say that no, eventually the fire would have burnt it even had you not flipped it over. So my Kavin, why is that an avoda? Why do you transgress? The thing would have happened anyway. You didn't do anything that was necessary.
So the Gemara says no. Lo tzricha, you needed to if you would not turn it over, it would have taken 2 hours to be burnt up. Okay, now because you turned it over, it took only 1 hour. So it wasn't necessary, but it would have gotten done eventually. But it was helpful. It speeded up the process. Okay, this is teaching us anything that speeds up the avoda, that helps the avoda getting done quicker, even though it's not absolutely necessary, is considered to be part of the avoda, and enough for a non-kohen to get misa b'dei shemayim, or a kohen who is tamei to get misa b'dei shemayim. Yes, Charlie.
That's kind of a kiddush, because it's not one of the 4 avodas.
Well, yes, but that's different. Meaning, it's not one of the classic 4 avodot to make a korban kosher, which is shchita, kabbalah, halacha, and zrika. But it is an avoda of the things that are limited to kohanim and only and prohibited against a non-kohen, and also similarly prohibited against a kohen who is tamei. Okay.
The other question is, we talk about shortest route, and the way you have it on the board is shortest route out of the Azara, but it's also usher to be tamei. At least some forms of tuma in the Harabayit itself.
Yeah, I mean,
to get out of the Azar, or the shortest route to get off
these tumas are only basically a problem in the Azara.
Okay.
The only person that is not allowed on Harabai is somebody who is tamei because of some bodily omission. Any tuma that basically comes from the outside,
you can still go on
you can go on Harabayis, right?
Okay.
But it's a good question. Okay, so the Gemara says like this. Amar Rav Oshaya, but in the Ema Milsa, I want to say something, but I'm afraid about the reactions of my colleagues. Okay, it's very interesting. Sometimes in a tshuva, if somebody wants to say something that's a little bit innovative or radical or whatever, so he would write, Lule de mistafina. If I were not afraid for the reaction from my colleagues, I would say the following. And then he goes out and says it, which means I'm acknowledging that this is a little radical, and I'm saying it a little tentatively, but here goes. Okay, so that's exactly what he's saying here. I want to say something, but I'm afraid by the reaction of my colleagues. Here's what I want to say. If somebody goes into a house that has tzara'at, okay, and if you enter the house, you're tamei. So if you were to go normally face, front in, with your face facing in, then presumably your chayav, Tosfos discusses that, as soon as the majority of your body went in, then you've entered into the house. It says haba el habayis, the person who enters into the house, or to be defined as entering when the majority of your body was in the house. But he says if you're walking in backwards, even if a tiny part of your body is outside of the doorway, even your nose, it's still sticking out, facing outwards, and it's not into the house, you're tahor. You're not tamei because you haven't entered in. Now, what's the difference which way you enter in? So let's take a look. Okay, his whole body except for his nose, tahor. It's only if you enter in a natural way. Now, why we're saying it here is going to be relevant because we're going to connect it to the Beis Hamikdash in a minute. But anyway, so I want to say that. Now, why is that so crazy? It's a reasonable thing to say, maybe. And it says if you come, you have to come naturally in a normal way. Here's why I'm afraid of the reaction of my colleagues, because they'll say back to me, kulonami. So then why do you say he's tahor only because his nose is out? Even if he goes in 100%, he should be tahor because he never officially entered in. He came in backwards, right? You understand the question. If you only tamei when you come in normally, so then even if you come in, the whole part of you comes in, you should be tahor. So he says, I recognize the question. I don't have an answer, but obviously when you're fully in your tamei, I just don't know a way to explain why. So comes Rava at his defense. So Amar Rava, Kulo logara mikalim shevabayis. If you're entering totally, then you're tamei not for entering in the house, you're tamei for being in the house. And that's just like the vessels. The vessels that were in the house didn't enter, but they're tamei. So if you're fully in, you're tamei for that reason. Okay, to see v'lo yitma kol asher babayis. Okay, everything in the house becomes tamei. So basically he's saying, you're right, actually, if you think about it, this might have been a good strategy, for, who was it who was saying it? Rabbi Shaya. It's like, if you say something radical, everybody's going to jump on you. If you say, I have an idea, but there's this one problem with it that can't figure out, then everybody's going to try to figure out how to help you explain that idea. Okay, so anyway, he got Rav on his side. So anyway, but he said, you're tamei when you do an act of entering. That's defined as going in face first and the majority of your body.
And you would be tamei if you were fully in the house, like anything in the house, and that doesn't matter how you got in. Okay, and either way, you're tamei. Now, how is this relevant to us? Let's take a look. Tanya namihachi, gagim halalu, the roofs on top of the azara and the heichal, okay, were not sanctified with the kedusha of the heichal and of the azara. Okay. You can't eat there the holy of holy, the holiest sacrifices. You can't shech shlamim. It does not have the kedusha of the azara or of the heichal. Okay, it doesn't have the kedusha of the azara or of the heichal. So, because it doesn't have that kedusha, the tamei shenichnas derech gagim leheichal patur. Now, so first of all, if somebody is on the roof here and you're tamei, you don't transgress for being on the roof because you're not in the azara. The azara is only defined as the floor going up to the roof. But from the roof on, the airspace is also like has the kedusha, okay? But you're right, we talked before about a guy suspended in the air. That was only a question of could he bow down or not. But the airspace has the kedusha, but only going up to the roof. Guy here is on the roof, he is not violating being tamei in the azara. So he's still safe. Then he crashes through the roof and lands down here, okay? So what we're comparing it to the case of the guy who walks in the house backwards. He didn't enter naturally into the azara. He was safe when he was on the roof, and now he's crashed through and entered through the roof. Okay, that also he's not high for entering the azara. That's not an act of entering. All right. Only if you enter in the natural way. And in that way, it's similar to Rabbi Shaia's point that entering means entering in naturally. Of course, if you, now that you're in the azara, if you waited too long, you would be chayiv, right? But that would be okay. But the act of entering, normally you're chayiv if you're tamei, you're already tamei. The very moment you enter, you transgress. Here, not, because you have not entered the natural way. But you would transgress, of course, going back to our earlier theme, if you waited around. All right, now we do, yes, Charlie?
So today, we would not be transgressing entering the azar while tamei if we were to be dropped from a helicopter.
Exactly, but then you transgress if you stayed around.
By staying around, yeah. So we could stay there, so we could be there and then immediately leave.
Exactly. Okay. So, now, the Mishnah, I wasn't here when you did the Mishnah, but the Mishnah does this weird turn. Okay, I mean, this is so funny the way that all of these things are such digressions from getting to our point about Shevuot. Okay, we did this whole thing about Tumas Mikdash and what Korban, and then what you're atoned for on Yom Kippur, and now we're still like, how do you transgress Tumah? Now we get to some completely other halacha about when is a Beis Din chayav for when they rule. This is a Horios discussion, which we'll get to eventually. If a Beis Din rules and says that you're allowed to do something and you do it, and it's a sin and they were making a mistake, and it's a sin that you get kares for, then Beis Din brings a korban when most of Israel listens to them for their bad ruling. But it would only be a type of a sin that you would get karet for if you did willfully, and bring a chatas for if you did unintentionally. And the Mishnah says these sin, and also the Gemara says it's a type of a scenario where there's a positive mitzvah associated with it and a negative mitzvah associated with it. So the Gemara says even though the case of the mikdash is a sin that you bring a korban for, and a sin that there's kares, and there's a negative mitzvah, don't enter in, and a positive mitzvah which is shachu min ha'machanes, send the tamei people out. If Beis Din ruled incorrectly about this, they would not bring a korban, and people listen to them, they would not bring a korban. Why not? Even though it has all those components, the korban you bring, the individual brings, is an olev yored, is a variable cost korban. And since that's the korban, the Beis Din only brings their korban. If the people did a sin that had the individual done it, they would bring a normal fixed price chatas. But a variable price chatas or whatever variable type chatas, so that's what it says. This is not the sin, a type of a sin, even though it looks like it's got all the components that Beis Din would be chayiv for. Okay? So the Gemara says, that you are not, but the you are not means that a Beis Din is not chayiv for it. So the Gemara says, Heichikai, what's the context of this statement? To come in Zohi, this is one. Hasam Kai, it's going over there in Horios. Ein chayavin al esei v'alot asei shep mikdash. It's a mission Horios. Beis Din would not bring a korban if they ruled incorrectly about a positive and negative mitzvah relating to the tomb of the mikdash. Even though there's a positive and a negative and kares and a korban, but it's not a fixed price korban. Okay? Now, because it's not a fixed price korban, there's another halacha as well.
If an individual has a doubt if he or she did something that would be deserving of a korban chatas, I don't know if I ate chaylev or not. I have a concrete reason to think I might have. Okay, I bring an asham talui, which is a type of a korban to suspend the judgment until I can figure out if I did the sin or not. That asham talui is only for a sin that when I discover I've done it, I would bring a fixed price chatas. But a sin like tumas mikdash, that when I discover I've done it, I bring a variable price chatas. There's no asham talui for it if I have a doubt whether I've done it. Okay, so that's what it goes on. This Mishnah in Horios, the aim of asham talui al esei velo tosei shabi mikdash. Fine, so that's the context. So that we've done discussing this whole issue about going into the mikdash, the tumah, and all the various scenarios of the various korbanot and Yom Kippur, and ways in which how long you have to stay in there, and it's not a type of a thing that a basin would bring a korban for. Now that gets us onto another digression, which is, what's the type of a thing that basin would bring a korban for? Now you could probably think about a million things. Yeah. Don't eat chaylev, okay? That's a classic example of bringing a chatas. You could even say there's an asay. The asay is kol behema tahora tochelu. The lo tasay is actually this is not a behema tmeya, but anyway, you could probably pick a ton of things that basin would bring a korban for, like fasting on Yom Kippur, whatever the case might be. Anyway, of all the possible things in the universe, the one that it picks in the Mishnah Horios, and that's repeated here, is, you want to know the type of thing basin would be chai for? If they posted incorrectly about a case of a man having sex with a woman when she was a nida, having intercourse with a woman when she was a nida, okay? And the scenario is that if he's having intercourse with her, and the intercourse started before she was a nida, and then in the middle of the intercourse she said, I just became a nida, he has to withdraw, but it's actually the exact flip halacha of, and it's so fascinating the way the Gemara is suggesting, or the Mishnah is suggesting all these parallels. Okay, in this case, you're supposed to get out as fast as possible, and not wait. And right, there's all about he has a problem. Doing fast as possible is the issue. There, if the man withdraws while he still has an erection, that's considered part of the act of intercourse, and actually that's a transgression. And he actually has to wait till he loses the erection and then withdraw. So it's like the exact, aesthetically, it's funny to use that word, but anyway, speaking, it's a nice little parallel, okay? But it makes all these really interesting suggestions, which is very powerful from the way, religiously, a lot of people think, maybe not so much in the non-Orthodox community, but certainly like in the Haredi community, about issues around the halachas of tumas of nida, because on the one hand, in the Torah itself, nida appeared with all the other tumot. Right, like with a zav and a zava and a valkyrie and all those things, right? So to what degree do we and the Maseches Nida is in Maseches Taharot. So to what degree do we think about it as just Tum and Tahara? On the other hand, there are Tum and Tahara mostly isn't relevant nowadays. But the one thing that applies, the one remaining halacha of Tumas and Tahara, is the fact that a nida is not allowed to have, a nida can't have sex with her husband, or a man can't have intercourse with a woman who's a nida. Okay, so it still has that application in terms of that all other areas of Tum and Tahara do not. And then there's always a question about, are they always the same consideration? Like there's a couple of halachas of Tumas Nida that some Rishonim say, this only makes her tamei in terms of issues like the Beis HaMikdash. It wouldn't affect her status vis-a-vis her husband, which is very bizarre to think that those two could be separated, okay? But on the one hand, we're dealing with Nida that is a Tum and Tahara idea. There's an idea of, not entering in, literally, the act of intercourse is called bia. We just wrote a pasuk, v'habayil abayis, right? Lo yavo. Bia is the act of intercourse. It's to penetrate, to enter in from the male perspective, right? So it's not entering in a state of tuma, okay? And then there's the whole issues of if you are tamei, how does one withdraw, right? It's making these exact parallels. But of course, the suggestion then is, if you think about it, but when there's no tuma, if we're going to make that suggestion, then when there's no tuma, then the act of intercourse is being held up in parallel to the act of entering into the Beis HaMikdash, right? If you just think about the parallels we've suggested, which suggests two things. On the one hand, there's very vivid imagery when the Gemara discusses how the Kohen Gadol goes in to the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. That's very vivid imagery in the Gemara that sort of sees that as a type of an act of intercourse, like it's, the ultimate intimacy with God. On the other hand, if you think about husband and wife,
to talk about, the kedusha, the sanctity, of the of the sexual act, and the way through which the sexual act, both, husband and wife are coming together, a baby might be being conceived, and if you think about, so using that imagery, that it's sort of like, it's being compared to entering into the temple and doing an act of worship, right? So there's it's very powerful what those ideas are, and that's why in a lot of traditional literature, the talk is about Kedushas Yisrael is dependent on keeping Taras HaMishpacha. So you get the word Tara, like it was Hilchos Nida, right? And it's Kedushas Yisrael, because this is where the Jewish babies are formed in this union, and this is where we still have Kedusha nowadays. So this whole parallel and imagery is extremely powerful, all right? So let's see now what the Gemara says, all right? So it says, Aval chayovin al esei ve'alo tasei shebenida. So the thing you would be chayav for, the basin would be, is if they ruled about the positive and negative commands of a nida incorrectly, and then this person wound up having intercourse or withdrawing when he still had an erection, and that's why he transgressed. The Kamar, excuse me. Similarly, if there was a doubt about it, it would bring in Asham Tavlai. The Kamar, Zoe mitzvah aseh shebemikdash. So our mission was saying this issue about going in and staying in and whatever in the base of Mikdash, ein chayavin aleha, is one that a basin would not be chayav if ruled. The ezi mitzvah aseh shebenidah shechayavin aleha, which is one that you are chayav, is the following, and this is now our Mishnah. This is the parallel to the Mikdash case, but this is the case that basin would transgress because it is kares, and you do bring a chatos if it was b'shogeg. Hayamishamesh ima tahora, the amr lo nitmesi. A man was having intercourse with a woman who was not a nida, and then she says, "I became a nida." Upiresh miyad, and he separated immediately while he still had an erection. So chayiv, he is chayiv. That's an act of having intercourse. That's considered an act of intercourse, and that would be an act of kares. If it was b'shogeg, he didn't realize that it was forbidden or whatever, it would be a chatos, okay? And that's chayiv. The lo taseh is not having intercourse with a woman who's a nida, and the aseh is, we're going to learn from a minute, he's artemet b'nei Yisrael mitumotam. We're going to learn from a positive mitzvah that you should have to be separate in these cases, similar to vayishalchu min hamachaneh, you have to separate in order to make sure you do not become tameh. And the reason he transgresses if he withdraws immediately is because it's the same pleasure. It's part of the act of intercourse. Well, so both the movement in and the movement out. Itmar. Now it was taught. Abai Amar Mishmeid Rabbi Chia Barav Chayiv Shtayim. If a man withdraws while he has an erection, he transgresses he starts having sex and then he withdraws and then he became a nida in the middle. He transgresses twice. Amar Rav Amar Shmuel Barav Shava Amar Rav Huna Chayiv Shtayim. Chayiv twice. Chada Knisa, one for having done the intercourse initially. Now the funny thing is, when he did the initial act of intercourse, she wasn't yet a nida. She became a nida during. During. So how he gets for that initial act, v'chada prisha, one on withdrawing. So we get the withdrawing. We don't get the initial act. Okay, so we are going to, I guess let's finish the daf. We'll probably wind up repeating this tomorrow, but let's just read to the end of the daf. So Havi Bey Rabba, so Rabba or Rava challenge this or question this. But what's the scenario? Ilema samach levista. If you say the reason he transgressed for the original act before she was a nida was because she was right, it was right before she was expecting to get her period. So that's like being highly irresponsible, right? So that's, you do not go ahead and do something if there's a good likelihood that in the process of doing it, it's going to turn into be an avera, all right? So that's why, now he's not mazed, but he would be, let's say, he would be, let's say, a shogeg. He would think that it wouldn't, he told himself it wasn't going to happen, maybe, or he thought that he would, be very quick, type of a thing. So, okay, but it's still irresponsible, and you'd bring a chatos. So if that's the scenario, ubima, now who are we talking about? Ilema b'talmid chacham, somebody who's a scholar, so therefore he knows what the halachas are. So bishlema akanisa l'chayiv. I get why he's chayiv for the initial act of penetration because that was a shogeg and kasavar yechoni livo. He figures I can do an act of intercourse with my wife and we can separate before she gets her period. Okay, he was irresponsible, but he wasn't intentional. So that's why he brings one korban. That I get. Ella aprisha amayim l'chayiv. But by prisha, when he separates,
why is he chayav a korban? Meaning it's not that he should be off the hook. He's more transgressing. If he knows the halacha, then when he separates and he withdraws, he's mezidu. He's willful. Okay, so if he knows what he's doing, then he's negligent at the beginning. That's a korban, but he's willful at the end. That's not a korban. Okay, and we'll just read one more line. We'll review this tomorrow, but we'll read one more line. And if the guy doesn't know halacha, so then it's all one state of not knowing. Okay. Even when he finds out in the middle, his wife tells him in the middle, you know what, I just became a nida. The way Rashi explains it is, he doesn't realize that he's now done anything wrong because he didn't realize that it was wrong to be having sex having intercourse in the first place when she was about to get her period. So it's all one big act of one big mistake. I'll explain this more tomorrow. But the basic point is, since he was pretty ignorant in general of the halacha, so it would not lead to two korbanot. One, being aware in the middle that he became a nida doesn't make him aware that he's done something wrong. It doesn't make him aware that he has to bring a korban. So therefore, even though he did two separate things that were wrong, and neither of them were intentional, and both of them were b'shogeg, one was he started having intercourse with his wife right before she became a nida, and the other was he withdrew while he still had the erection. Because he never became fully aware in the middle that he was obligated in the korban, it would only be one korban, not two korbanot. So we will continue this tomorrow, but I do need to end by saying, of course, this complete thing is all, male, from the male perspective, androcentric. I mean, even to the point that we're talking about the korbanot that he has to bring and not the korbanot that she has to bring. She also is doing the act, so maybe she's not controlling whether he's withdrawing with or without his erection, but she's also obligated in a korban for engaging in the act initially. Okay, so the whole thing is, of course, going to be very male perspective, but we will continue with this on Shabbos. Yes.
Question?